Hey,
Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. I hope you're doing well. Chris just informed me we turn on all the lights when we come in the studio, and I came down here before him and turned on all the lights so that I could buy myself a few more minutes of, brushing my teeth and combing my hair. But I missed a light, and he just noticed as we went live.
typical. She needs to shine brighter than me.
Sorry.
Yeah, you want first in the credits from here on in too.
I do.
So we have got a really exciting show, and quite frankly, very long overdue.
Yes.
We have never had anyone on from the NCI before.
I thought
we had a whole panel on, and the NCI was
right.
part of it, but that's so, and we have supported them in the past, but we don't say enough what amazing job they're doing over at the NCI. They are bringing to light so many things. They are gaining so much traction. I see their videos floating everywhere and waking people up. They're doing amazing work, incredible work.
They're doing the work the government and our legal system should actually be doing, but for whatever reason doesn't want to do. So the citizens have taken the power in their hands, and it's led by
our guest, who is here tonight, lawyer Shawn Buckley, and head of the NCI now. Thanks for coming.
Well, actually, I think there would be a lot of people that disagree with that. And so the NCI is run by a board, and I'm not even on the board.
Oh,
but I do a lot of work, and I am the lead counsel. So the NCI, when the citizens got together and they're trying to figure out, how do we do this so it's credible? Yeah. A decision was made. Well, let's make sure those commissioners are independent of, the organizers, so that when, they're sent to write the report, we're not influencing them, right? So we actually borrowed a set of government inquiry rules and just kind of rewrote them for this. So, which is really interesting because, I was one of the original founders and really, really in there and helping to set it up and get it going. And it's all fine and good in theory. Oh yeah, well, we'll interview these people and pick commissioners and go through all of this process. Like the first set of hearings, we had 24 full days across Canada, literally Truro, Nova Scotia, then Toronto, Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Red Deer, Vancouver, Quebec City, and Ottawa. It's truly a miracle it got done. And then the commissioners are just sent off and we have no input at all. So, it's kind of, what are we going to get back? And we get back probably the best report ever in history. For those who haven't read the commissioner's report, you can tell there's no bias at all. So there's no agenda for them. Right. And they were charged with coming out with positive recommendations. So our mandate is listen, learn, and recommend. So we weren't there to grind an axe. We were there to find out what happened. And we wanted both sides. We all knew the government narrative. It's being shoved down our throat at all times. But, in every province we went to, we sent the Minister of Health and the public health officials subpoenas to come. Now, we didn't have the power to compel them. So the subpoenas had to say, there's no criminal or civil liability for not coming. But not a single one came. And, but we had, we've had the other side. Can I tell you a funny story? It's not funny, actually. I was almost in tears last night when I was sharing it. I was lecturing yesterday in Morinville, Alberta, for a group, SA22, just a lovely kind of local group that banded together during COVID just to create community. But, I'm probably a more conservative crowd than liberal, so to speak. And I asked the crowd, I said, well, how many of you in this crowd are going to, sympathize with, a person that, went through the gender change? So transgender person who actually was responsible for organizing and petitioning the BC government to start paying for gender transition surgeries. And you could actually sense the crowd's getting upset with nobody's volunteering that they're going to be sympathetic with a transgender person that actually, started the movement to coerce I shouldn't say coerce, but influence the BC government to start paying for gender transition surgeries. And then I told her story. And I'll share the story with you. Because one thing that the NCI is, what we learned is we're all the same. And if you listen to people's stories, like I'd love to talk about how the vaccinated and unvaccinated, how we had just the same experience. But let me just share Kelly Lynn's story. And okay, so you know where I'm going. Okay.
I love Kelly Lynn.
So she testified under oath this past October in Vancouver when we switched our topic to Are Children Safe? Now, Kelly Lynn was in an abusive home where basically, her parents allowed people to come and rape her.
Mm-hmm.
So she's repeatedly raped, brutally raped as a child, repeatedly. And she notices that her brothers aren't being raped. And as you know, children are pretty smart. Mm-hmm. She realizes, well, if she was a man, she would be safer. So then she becomes an adult, and she's raped a couple more times. And to be safe, she asks herself, would I be safer as a man? So, well, then she encounters this transition ideology, which, I mean, watch her testimony. It's absolutely, it's absolutely amazing because it starts to explain some behaviors that you just don't understand unless you're in the culture. So, and there's actually this whole procedure that you have to go through to, get you basically to agree to this gender transition surgeries, because that's such a big commitment. And so you end up being part of a group, and like this becomes your tribe, and you have to meet regularly. And the first thing you have to do is, for a full year, you have to carry a letter from your doctor on your person explaining that you identify as the other sex. So, in case and the whole idea is just preposterous. So let's say you're pulled over by a police officer and your driver's license shows you're a female, but you're dressed as a man. So you got to have this doctor's letter. Like, isn't that preposterous? Like, really, are you going to have problems with a police officer so that you actually have, like, what, they're not going to be able to tell by your face that who you are, like that you have to carry a letter. But you see, their ideology, your self-worth is based on others accepting your gender choice.
Right.
And this is important to understand. It can explain the angry outbursts when people who don't understand that that's really important to them, like, somebody who doesn't understand that culture, like I might see a man dressed as a woman and saying, well, I'm a woman. And to me, I'm confused. It's no, like, I can tell you're a man. Well, I don't understand that their self-worth depends on me agreeing with them. So when they don't, they're actually legitimately upset because their self-worth is based on others agreeing with, their subjective interpretation of who she is or they are. And she explains this to us, and also explains how you can't question. If you question, then you're transphobic. I mean, like, literally you're a rights violator because, now this has become part of our human rights. So like she went through the surgery. So she, and she said that, well, after she had her breasts removed, she's actually really, has second guessing this, has remorse and all of this. She can't express that in her group.
Oh,
Wow.
right.
Because then you're excluded. Like you see, now you're being transphobic. You're, violating other people. You're not creating a safe space for others. So once you're in this, like, because we all depend on our peer groups, we all depend. It was just fascinating, and it was also fascinating. Like now she's transitioned back to a woman and actually has, become very serious with God, and that was touching too. How that happened. Like she would have conversations with, her brothers, and her family's, very Christian. And at times, at the end of a conversation with her older brother, he would pray. Well, not her oldest brother, but, another brother, it's life and death. He needs a surgery in the United States. So I guess they can't do this surgery in Canada. This is life and death, and he's waiting. And then he gets the call. Well, you got to be there on Monday or Tuesday. And I think it's like Thursday. Well, he had submitted a new passport. It didn't get sent to the Vancouver area. It got sent to Winnipeg or something like that. Oh, so no. He's not gonna be able to travel, and he's gonna die. And he's he is distraught. And Kelly Lynn's upset about this, so she's having a conversation with her older brother. And she says, "You got to pray." And he says, "No, you pray." So for the first time in a long time, she prays. Well, I mean, I can't do the story justice. You have to go and watch her testimony. But so many things had to fall into place, and so many people in the passport office had to care. Right. That in one day, they get it from Winnipeg to North Van, and it ends up there at the end of the workday on a Friday. And it's like, well, they're not in North Van. And for those of you, you might as well be in Greater Toronto. If you're on the wrong end of the, you're just not getting it. And there's just frantically calling around, and some niece is right there, is able to pick it up. It was totally a miracle, and he's able to go, and that forced her into, okay, I have to become serious about it. It's compelling. But where I was going with that story is no, none of us are going to be sympathetic, right, with some transgender person that, caused one of our provincial governments. Well, wait a second. It's because we don't know the story.
Right.
Right. Yeah, that's one story too. And it's still going to be hard for a lot of people to wrap their minds around that, because we know a lot of it is more than just personal choice. There's a lot of psyops going on. There's a lot of destabilizing our country through, radical minorities.
Well, and the UN agenda is 100% about destroying our children and the ability to procreate later on in life.
But the takeaway is it doesn't get better until we start setting up these things to talk. I don't know if you're aware of it, but we set up Justice for the Vaccinated, and our big event here in Toronto was a giant flop, because Justice for the Vaccinated makes you think, and it gets you through that psyop and breaks that brain jail. But the vaccinated didn't want to have anything to do with the freedom movement, and the unvaccinated didn't think that the vaccinated deserved justice, because they are the ones getting abused.
We got to speak to that, but let me just say, because you guys did that years ago.
And
you guys had those round stickers, Justice for the. I thought that was just a brilliant campaign.
Oh, well, thank you.
Just so you know, I thought, wow, is that ever clever, and should get people thinking. And you had a website on the sticker for people to go to.
Yep.
Oh yeah, no, that
up and running, but
website's up and running. We're trying to keep it updated now and again. But it was actually in a casual conversation with Vincent Gerses, where he's like, "What we really need is justice for the vaccinated," and we just sort of ran with it.
Went, yes.
It was 2 tours or 3 tours through BC and Alberta, and then we had that big event in Toronto, and they didn't want to come together, the two groups. So it was a little early, I think, for that.
So can I speak to that? Because again, it's something that blew me away about the National Citizens Inquiry, because, I don't know how bad it was in Toronto, but in Alberta, we had our opposition leader, Rachel Notley, publicly calling for the army to be brought in and go door to door.
Yes.
And so when I lecture in Alberta, and I did it last night in a lecture in Alberta, I even just, when I started talking about this, if I ask people in the audience, put up your hand, if in the middle of the COVID darkness, you honestly believe the army would be going door to door, dragging unvaccinated people out of their homes and jabbing them, sometimes almost every arm goes up.
Yeah. Yes. Wow.
And I can tell you, I live in Alberta, and I was worried about it. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
I was worried about like the level of fear we've had. And I mean, I was angry at the vaccinated,
Mhm.
you know, like, and like the irony is like this, like in Alberta, and I imagine it happened there, but like we had these identity papers we called vaccine passports. And for a
Yeah.
period of time, unless you had these special identity papers, you couldn't go to your kid's hockey game. You couldn't go to a restaurant. Like you could go to the grocery store and gas station, and that's basically it. So, I mean, you probably couldn't even go to a hospital if you had a heart attack. Oh no, you'd just be treated like you had leprosy, and we were in, the dark ages.
Correct.
So they'd have to show these identity papers, and a lot of them would gloat on social media because of this hatred with the unvaccinated. And, they didn't understand that the joke was on them.
Exactly.
Because they were participating in a police state ritual. Like, let's call a spade a spade. They were identity papers. And what people don't understand is the ritual of showing identity papers is to, every time you do it, it reinforces in your mind that you are a servant to the state, that you're a slave. And here's how it works. It's like, before identity papers, you want to go to a restaurant, like, you're just trying to decide if that's what you want to do. It's like, oh, honey, did you take anything out of the freezer? No. Or I feel like Mexican food. But it's just, do I want to do this? But
Yes.
when you have to start showing it, and that's how you're free, when it's just there's no obstacle for you doing something. But when you have to show your identity papers, think about what's happening subconsciously here. You have to go through a police state ritual of showing your identity papers. And if you perform the ritual properly, then and only then does your master, the state, grant to you the right or the privilege that you're trying to access. In the hard police states like Stalinist Russia or Nazi Germany, when they decided to throw up a roadblock, so if you're going from the south side of the city to the north, they actually didn't care. Like, this is the thing, people don't understand the psychology. The police state, they don't care that you're driving from the southern part to the northern part. They know where you live, and if they want you, they're coming at 2 a.m.
Yes.
Like, they do not care at all. Just like our state didn't care. Contact tracing? Are you kidding me?
Yep.
Right.
Go to an Oilers game with 14,000 people, and like they're going to contact. Like, it's just so funny. It's ludicrous. No, why these police states want a roadblock going back and forth is every time you perform the ritual, you were subconsciously reinforcing in your mind that the state is your master and you are their servant, and the state grants you privileges, and you do it over and over and over again. And before you know it, you don't even have the ability to resist, because it's so ingrained in your mind that you're a servant.
Yes.
And servants don't resist. And, the shame for those vaccinated that participated in that ritual is their children watched them.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a really well put statement. I mean, the way you framed that is exactly perfect. And the worst part about that is they came out. It was 10 days. I remember them starting in 10 days before they rolled out the first vaccine. People get really upset when we call it a vaccine. So when 10 days before they rolled that out, they started saying, well, it doesn't stop transmission and it doesn't stop infection. So they literally told you that the vax passport was useless. There was no point to it, and people still went with it anyway. And that was the worst part. They even told you there was no point in doing this.
Yeah. And here in Ontario, they actually had us set up in color grids, red, orange, green, yellow, whether you could go to this city or that city. If you were from a red city and you were going into a green city, they wouldn't let you in. You had to show your driver's license. It was ridiculous what they were doing. I remember when they brought in the Vax passport here in Toronto, we did a video. We totally forgot that September 22nd, it was rolling out, and if you didn't have your vax passport, you couldn't eat in restaurants. And 6 of us freedom fighters were in Toronto and went down to the Eaton Center, not even thinking, and there were all the signs saying you can't eat here. You can buy the food, but you can't eat here. And boy, oh boy, we showed the world how you eat without showing a passport or giving up your identity. And that video went viral. And I don't know how, well, probably millions of people saw that video, and we're so thankful to have somebody show the way of how to say no, how to stand up to tyranny. And it really didn't dawn on me how bad it was until that video went out. And I went from like 400 followers or 500 followers or something like that, literally to 20,000 overnight. It was insane. And I was stupid enough to put my email and my phone number out there saying, hey, if you want your Know Your Rights package so you can eat too, give me a shout. And I literally, I still have emails that are unopened on my computer from September. I had like 100,000 emails come into me begging for this package I had put together. And it was shocking to me how many people didn't, one, know their rights, didn't know they had rights, and two, weren't strong enough without a piece of paper in their hand to say no. It was shocking to me.
Well, I'm sure you got kicked out of the odd store for not wearing a mask, for example. I have. And I found it traumatic.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get kicked out when I had the police called on me many times, but I carried my Know Your Rights package with me. So I just would flip to the law and say, here it is right here. And, when the police showed up, there's nothing they could do because they're staring at the law. So as long as you didn't have the law, yeah, you got kicked out and you were beaten in a lot of cases. I saw.
Well, and I was obviously less organized than you were at the beginning of the pandemic. I was really shocked, and I'm not afraid to say it. I mean, until those truckers started rolling, I'm cowering in my basement, and and they're rolling, and it's like, okay, like we just have to stand up, and that's it.
Exactly.
And I mean, I think that's the lesson, isn't it? Is that took them a lot of guts to do, and there's big personal cost, and and they're to say they're unfairly maligned in the mainstream media is such an understatement. It's crazy, just the level of lies and abuse, and the fact that they would be charged and then sued civilly, like really for mischief for tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, like. So you mean we can't protest in Canada?
Apparently not.
And we, so can we, well, we can't. And can we protest, not super violently, but aggressively even? Because this was the most peaceful protest ever.
Right.
And one thing that people have to take in mind is, like, what was it? Was it like, how long was the truckers before they got taken down? Like, was it 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
It was just over 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Like 3.5 weeks.
So consider this. They brought police officers from all over Canada to do this and organize them. It takes you 3 weeks to do that.
Yes.
It takes you. So from day one, the federal government was planning on taking this down by force. Trudeau never met with them. Wait a second. You've got like the biggest crowd on Parliament Hill probably ever. And you're the prime minister and you won't even meet with them. And from day one, they were putting into place to take it down. And I want everyone watching to go to on the National Citizens Inquiry website, there's like a hearings tab, and then there's 2023, 2024. And if you go to 2023, then there's a drop down with Toronto. Watch Tom Marazzo's evidence. And he's included in there, and it's one of the exhibits, as a video clip of, a decorated Afghan war veteran who's disabled, being dragged to the ground by the war memorial by, black masked police. Like, on what planet is it okay for police dealing with citizens to be masked?
Right.
Like, on what planet is that okay? But one by one, they're dragging these guys off. But this is a video of a disabled, decorated Afghan war veteran. You can't see from the video, but he's wearing his medals.
Right.
And they put him to the ground and put the boots to him in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've never seen nor experienced or thought I would experience the horrendous radical treatment of people in all my life. And, standing in that crowd and watching it go down and feeling the energy and seeing the look on those officers' faces. And it wasn't just officers in that crowd. It was paramedics and firemen as well, because they didn't have enough officers. So they brought in paramedics and firemen as well. And I've got it all on my video showing. But to see some of the officers you could see did not want to be there, and others were just gleeful about being there and with their orders to beat and pepper spray, peaceful people. There's women praying and we're singing "Oh Canada," and they are pepper spraying and kicking you and hitting you with batons, throwing people off of walls, destroying the property that was just sitting there. All these, tents and barbecues and tables and chairs and food. The amount of food that they destroyed on the streets. We got people going hungry and they're destroying food. It just blew my mind. Never in my life did I think I would ever see something like this in Canada, ever, especially against.
No, it's truly amazing. Do you remember, how? Yeah, I don't know how we get there, and I don't know well, we do. I mean, literally, it's the psyops. The amount of propaganda. The thing that, remember, early on in the pandemic, there was a nursing home in Montreal.
Yes.
Where the residents actually starved to death.
Yes.
Because the caretakers were too scared to go in. And there's a couple of things amazing about that. The first is that we heard about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the mainstream media, how many times did that happen and we didn't hear about it?
Yes.
I can only imagine how many times.
But and then we're so divided, right? Remember, our esteemed leader, and I can't say that with a straight face, saying on, television, how long are we going to tolerate them?
Yes.
The unvaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And so the level of hatred, and the thing is again, we're all the same. The three of us, we would have gotten vaccinated if we believed something different. Because the experience, the thing that I find amazing that we hated each other so much is we were all having the same experience.
Yes.
So, and let me explain that. So let's say, and I know I'm generalizing, but it came out at the NCI, and just hearing people's stories, you were like, oh, okay, no, you're just a person like me, and I got to get over my anger issues, which just comes from fear anyway. But I appreciate I'm generalizing, but the vaccinated honestly believed, and so put yourself in this mindset, they honestly believed that there was this dangerous coronavirus that posed a mortal threat to both them and their family.
Yes.
But there's a solution. And I'll use the term. I mean, I know there's this vaccine.
Yeah.
There's this solution. If only those unwashed, unvaccinated people would take it, then I could be safe and my kids could be safe.
Mm-hmm.
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 Right? And because they're posing an actual threat to me and I'm afraid, I start getting resentment, and then I start getting angry, and then I hate them.
Yes.
Okay, now let's switch to the unvaccinated. Because it's exactly the same. It's just a different belief, but same behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm generalizing, but those unvaxxed, they honestly believed, put yourself in this headspace. They honestly believed that vaccine posed a mortal threat to them. Mm-hmm. They believed it could kill them or harm their loved ones like their kids. They honestly believed it.
Yeah.
Well, no worries in Canada. You don't have to take a treatment if you don't want to. Oh, wait. Those vaccinated. They're literally forcing us. They're enforcing passports. They're mocking us. We'll lose our jobs. How are we going to feed our families? The social pressure. We learned at the NCI the social pressure was more of a coercive factor than the economic.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we really didn't have a choice. And you send your kids to school, they're going to jab them and tell your kids not to tell us.
Yes.
So those vaccinated were posing a mortal threat to us, and we were afraid, and then we became resentment, and then we became angry and hateful. Tell me, what's the difference here?
None.
We're having the exact same experience. We just, depending on what news source we go to, our factual beliefs different. But if I believed like the vaxxed, I would have hated the unvaxxed. And if I believed like the unvaxxed, I would have, hated the vaxxed. And I had hatred. And then you realize we're all the same, and we act the same, and we're predictable. And that's how they were able to control us.
Yes.
Yes.
But we can't hate each other. That's part of the control.
Yes.
You can't. You start watching the testimony at the COVID round in 2023, and those vaccinated weeping on the stand, who have lost family members, who are disabled themselves, and they're treated like lepers in the hospital system, our medical system, because we can't admit yet
Yes.
Yes.
that the vaccine is dangerous.
Correct.
So you have mental health problems. It's all in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or, it's something completely different that, and so we're actually not treating these people because we can't officially acknowledge what's going on, which is absolutely brutal. Like the people that were vaccinated are the ones that we should be sympathetic about. They were duped or they were coerced. Like a lot of them said, I knew, but I had to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just like the Alberta Health Report just came out with the COVID whole thing, and it said we were duped, and it said how wrong it was, and it started to acknowledge the harms that are being done. And to your point that we're still not willing to admit it, the mainstream media has gone after that report and called it bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
For all intents purposes. And they've even found still a couple of doctors who are probably on the pharmaceutical payroll to say it's bullshit and it's full of lies and it should be thrown in the garbage. So you're right. To this day, there's still, even with all the adverse reactions that we can see, all the people that we know, including their own families, they're still refusing to admit it.
And, people know they're injured. Like, that's, I don't know about your circle, but I mean, it just seems more and more and more in my circle. And what frustrates me is why are we allowing this to go on? Like, I don't know, in Ontario, you guys probably refuse to jab kids with these COVID vaccines, but in Alberta, it's on our childhood schedule starting at 6 months.
It's on our schedule too. Mm-hmm. And they held the big superhero, be a superhero and come get your vaccine, kids. Oh, here's your free chocolate bars. Here's your free ice cream. Come to our DJ dance party. It was bad here. It was horrible here. Mm-hmm. Telling them they were going to be superheroes, saving their grandmas if you did this. And don't worry, you don't have to tell mom and dad. It's a secret between us. You're a superhero. So
how is it in 2025 in Canada when, I'm sorry, public health officials and government point out to one credible case in the world, let's not just limit ourselves to Canada, point out one credible case in the world of a healthy child dying of COVID. Like, if the child's got stage 4 leukemia and 6 months ago was given 2 months to live and dies, and you can swab them and run a PCR test for 100 cycles and find that maybe they died with COVID, and you have the audacity to say they died of COVID.
Right.
They're at zero. They're more, remember Ken Drysdale, before he became a commissioner, did the report using Canadian government statistics. And I think a child in Canada was 53 times more likely to be violently murdered than die of COVID. Like that, that's zero risk. And yet here we are in 2025 jabbing kids, and we're doing it because you and me, we're not doing enough, and your audience isn't doing enough. And it's we don't realize how powerful we are. You know, and I'm learning this myself. But you know, most people never in their life have actually written a letter to an MP.
Right.
Mhm.
Like most people have never even, you know, when somebody's pressure group's doing a campaign, sent an e-letter that was already written for them. Most of them haven't even done that.
Right.
Let alone phone their MP, or let alone, you know, in-office visit with their MP. And MPs will tell you, if they're honest, you know, if I get like 7-8 calls a week for a couple of weeks on an issue, I got to do something.
Mhm.
Right.
I know it's a big deal. Well, you know, the Alberta government like just totally gamed its citizens on this Alberta Bill of Rights. And when I say gamed it, is, you know, the Danielle Smith government, it was like, hey, we're going to make the Bill of Rights stronger. We're going to put in there the right to refuse medical treatment. And it's all popular. And she gets, you know, reaffirmed as the leader, and off we go. Well, she did the opposite. She gutted our Bill of Rights.
Yes, she
Yes.
did.
Like it's just an absolute train wreck.
Right.
You know what happened with our Bill of Rights. And so I'm on the federal scene. Like I'm doing the NCI stuff, and I'm with the Natural Health Product Protection Association. We're trying to protect access to natural health products, and that's taken a lot of my time. I really stay out of Alberta politics. But, you know, I was getting bugged. There was going to be this, you know, event on the legislative grounds. And, you know, the weather said it was going to be -6 million. I'm like, how can you not go to an outdoor event when it's going to be that cold? And finally, it's like, okay, fine, I'll agree to go, which meant I had to look at the thing, and so I could have something cogent to say in it. It's like, this is an absolute train wreck. And nobody had written a legal opinion on it. So I wrote a legal opinion. Well, I spent then that night, probably took me about 3 hours, wouldn't have gotten to bed till, you know, 1 or so, just sending it to every MLA in Alberta, because, you know, they're going to be voting third reading later in the week. And I thought, well, you know, I got to give them a chance. You know, that's like I'm still getting emails from him. And like, and it realized, you know, I just took 3 hours to send something. It didn't matter that I wrote it. Anyone could have written it.
Right.
And I got a whole bunch of feedback.
Right.
You know, if we had 100 of your viewers just say, you know what, I'm going to commit for a year. So 100 of your viewers commit for a year to once a month, one Sunday a month, spend 3 hours writing letters to MPs. One Sunday a month. Like, my God, you know, children are dying right now. Can you give us 2.5, 3 hours once a month? Like, do you love children enough for that? So, and what do we have? Like, how many MPs do we have? 322 or something?
Something like that.
338.
338. Yeah.
Okay. So once a month for a year, 100 people committing to write to every MP saying, stop jabbing kids. Like, you know, so take 40 minutes or half an hour to write the letter. It doesn't matter exactly what you say, and it only has to be a paragraph long. Like, you don't need to write a book. And then you type in the House of Commons address and you put in your MP's name. Right. Now, on the Parliament website, they're all listed. So you print that letter off and sign it, and then you just change the name, and you do that 338 times. And that actually is onerous. That's why this is going to take you like 3.5, 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And you can throw them in the same envelope and mail them to Parliament Hill. That one's probably not free because it's a thick letter, but like pay the $8 and off it goes. Now, if 100 people did that, just once a month, 3 hours to save kids, every MP will have received 1,200 letters in a year saying, please stop killing kids, like get Health Canada to revoke this authorization. Well, the MPs have not received 1,200 letters in 3 years.
Right.
Telling them to stop jabbing kids. Now, but do you see, that's just like 3 hours. That's not acceptable. If you were to give 5 hours a week calling, writing, whatever it is, we don't realize how powerful we are. Like, we're only in this mess. Like, you guys are doing everything you can, and your audience won't appreciate how much work it is to set up the shows and have to deal with people like me and all of that stuff. And I don't know if you guys, like, how do you pay for this?
Out of our own pockets.
Yeah, our pockets. Yeah.
Okay, so this is absurd. Like, because I went to your website and you got like where people can donate, but I know they don't.
Correct.
Like, they don't. And so
Right.
this is actually costing you money. A, you're not working. And B,
Correct.
it's costing you money. But you're doing it because you realize you have to do it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and I think Canadians should be ashamed. And those watching should be ashamed. You know what? We're all personally responsible now. We're in an information war. And how dare you not support people that are on the front lines? Like, not only do you need to be on the front lines, but part of participating is supporting people. You know, would it break you if you supported them $25 a month? That'd be
Right.
$300 a year. You're not going to miss 25 a month, but I tell you, you commit to do that monthly, it's sure going to help them. And
Mhm.
and we got to realize we got to do this. You know, like, we don't have a choice. We're in a revealing, and we're going to have an opportunity, especially because what's happening south of the border.
Yes.
We're going to have an opportunity to get our freedom back if we act.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, and people are your other options. Your options are narrowing as far as what we can do and what we've got available to us. And so people need to really step up now, because we're in the final stages if we don't.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this, but Mark Carney has said that he's going to do an all-out war on climate change, and he'll use every power at his fingertips to get it done, including the Emergency Act. So he's already said he'll use emergency powers to do green energy stuff. That's a shocking statement. And this is where we're heading, everybody. And so people need to understand that you've always had at your fingertips the power to say no. And people said, we need solutions. Well, you've had the solution, and that was
Mhm.
United Noncompliance all the way along. Just step up and say no. And nobody wanted to do that, or write your MPs like you're saying, and take the time to commit to it. But those options are dwindling, and people don't understand that right now.
Exactly.
I hadn't heard that statement. That's frightening.
Very, very frightening. And if you really want to, keep yourself up at night, read his book Values.
Oh,
It is bone chilling. And he really lays out that they are going to use climate change to take your property and to take your business away and to keep you in a digital prison. So
we've done a few shows on it. So
yeah.
if you don't want to read any books, just watch a couple of our shows. And the most recent one we did
but
was
you
about
know,
the noosphere.
Like, in all fairness, I mean, I'm worried about the fact that we're likely in a mini ice age, and it's just going to be cold, and we're not going to have enough warmth and enough CO2 in the air to grow crops and shorter growing seasons. Like, aren't you guys worried about that?
In reality, no. We have more trees than we need.
No, did you see? I turned it around and said I'm worried
Okay, yeah,
about global cooling, because we're
Yeah.
likely in a cooling cycle,
Right.
and we're not going to have enough CO2 in the air with shorter growing seasons to feed ourselves. You weren't paying attention.
Well,
I had turned it around.
We're not afraid because we've got tower gardens in our house, and we've built a Wallapini. So we're going to have food. I don't know about everybody else, but we're going to have food.
That's what makes it so confusing. It's cold because it's warm. That's the whole thing, right?
Yeah, no, but I mean it.
This is the coldest I've ever been.
The
Most
whole
of the summer, I was in hoodies and track pants and socks, and I hate having my feet covered. I have never been so cold in all my life, and I'm going, is it because I'm getting old now, or is it really just cold?
It's old.
But it is about control. And
Yes.
one thing we learned at the NCI, which is a real shame, like once we switched to our children safe, is these children today, like they actually believe that they're a liability to the environment, that it would be better if they were dead. Like, they actually believe that. Could you imagine you get out of the education system, like, we just wanted to go and conquer the world. What were we interested in? And,
Right.
but they're depressed, like they feel that they're a liability on the world.
We actually snuck into the UN SDG summit last year, September. We kind of put on our cloaks of, hey, we're just like you guys, to hear what they were saying. And there was about 22 or 28 meetings we snuck into. And you are absolutely correct. They had some young social media influencers. They were like 18 to 24. And that's what they were talking about, that their life was going to end because we were so selfish, that, they didn't have the CO2. They didn't have the same opportunities we did. And people needed to give them money now to lift them up because we had destroyed the world. I'm looking going.
Yeah, like no self-responsibility. Like, that society is going to survive, right? But it's all deliberate. Like, back to this gender thing. We had at the Vancouver hearings, Alex Newman testify about these treaties that every country has about education and human rights with the UN. And so it actually is, according to international treaty law now, a human right to be educated according to the UN education curriculum.
Yeah.
And that curriculum doesn't focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic. It focuses on things like empathy. Like there's a list. And when you think empathy, it's not like, oh, that person was rude to you. No. Empathy is like, well, how much do you support climate change?
Yes.
Do you understand that the United Nations should be running the world? Do you support, gender identity that's subjective? Like, it actually becomes a human right. I was a criminal lawyer, probably run like a good 1,500 trials. Like I was a high volume trial lawyer, but with a focus on constitutional rights. Before the Vancouver hearings, I had to go look at the criminal code at this conversion therapy sections.
Yes.
Because I'm interviewing witnesses in prep and it keeps coming up and I'm thinking, when you're hearing something and you think, oh, no, that's not true. And then when I thought, well, I better go and check. I couldn't believe it. So in Canada, you can take somebody who identifies with their birth sex. So you can take a little boy and you can move heaven and earth to convince them to become a girl, to convince them to become a cat, to convince them to become a houseplant. Like it doesn't matter what. That's perfectly legal. You can do whatever you want to screw up what they were thinking. Oh no, if they identified as their birth sex. But if they don't identify with their birth sex, it's actually a criminal offense to get them to identify with their birth sex again.
Yeah.
Now, how is that possible in Canada, that it's actually an offense to convert somebody who doesn't identify with their birth sex? And it's because we are now in this legal situation where it is a human right to be able to subjectively identify your sexual identification, like with whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
So that's now a human right, which, has the protection of law. And that led to, gender identity being put in our, human rights codes and into the criminal code where it's actually, but.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the worst part is that's not a thing. People think it's a thing, but what they've done is they spent the last, 20 years destroying national and personal identities, erasing right from wrong. And, the last bastion of how you start finding out who you are in this world was your gender. Like, am I a boy? Am I a girl? Where do I fit in that? How do I feel about that? And they're erasing that as well. So they've spent a lot of time erasing identities so they can start giving you the identity that you want to have.
It destroys the family also. So it does a couple of things. It prevents family prevention.
Yes.
But it also breaks up the family. So when I went to school, teachers and authority figures would refer to my parent that had a, male birth sex as my father.
Yes.
And my female parent as my mother. and there were aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters. But we get rid of all those family terms. You know, you can have a parent, or you can have a caregiver, and you can have a sibling. But we basically take the family out of the child's mind. It's our biggest institution.
Yes.
And we're just destroying these kids. Like, you're creating confusion when, you know, some Celtic kid with long hair or some boy goes to kindergarten, and then the teacher will say, you know, if the teacher's adopting the Soji thing, oh, long hair, that's like a girl trait.
Yes.
Like, on what planet now? And so you're probably a girl, not a boy. You know, or let's say you got 3 older sisters and you happen to be a boy. Well, you know, chances are you've played with dolls. And if you're, because that's what your sisters play with, and you want to be part of the tribe. Well, if your teacher will ask, your kindergarten teacher, well, if you ever played with dolls? Oh yeah, well, you're a girl, you're not a boy. It's almost like they're going back to like 1953 sexual mores. And if you don't identify with that, like what happened to the sexual revolution? If you don't identify with that, these children, these teachers and authority figures are putting confusion.
Yes. The stereotypes we worked so hard to get rid of, they've brought back, but they've brought back with a nefarious purpose. And that's what we're seeing played out now.
While at the same time saying, you and I, we can't do that. We can't stereotype. You know, boy is boy, girl is girl. You and I aren't allowed to do that, but they'll use that as a weapon at the same time.
Yeah. But the thing is, and I'm just basing this on what some experts at the Vancouver hearings were saying, is despite all these efforts to create this confusion, it's like almost all of them, once they're through puberty, they're not confused. They identify with their birth sex. Like it's so all these transition surgeries and that we're trying to push on them before puberty.
Right.
Which they're just not equipped to be making decisions like that. Like,
no,
you know, they're just not. Well, we're trying to solve a problem that resolves itself anyway. It's called growing up.
Yes,
exactly.
Right. You know,
So
you know, I don't know how older you guys are, but I mean, I went through well before any of this stuff. Well, I remember when we were teenagers, we just loved to hang out as a group and be depressed and complain about the world and our parents and all of that. Like, isn't that a rite of passage?
Of course.
I think so.
We don't need an antidepressant here. That's just part of being young, and you're transitioning and your hormones are changing and your roles are changing. Like, we used to find that, we used to think that was the just part of, and you got close friends that often were life lasting out of that.
Yeah. I was incredibly depressed until I stopped listening to Pink Floyd The Wall, and then I was fine.
I always say to my children, you know, you guys aren't any different than I was at your age. The only thing that's different is the tools you have now are different. You know, I didn't have a cell phone when I was 19, 20. I didn't have a cell phone. You guys do now. That's the only difference. The technology has changed, but the same emotional responses, the same confusion going through puberty, it's all the same. And the same, oh, I'm going to hide and do this from my parents. That's all the same. None of it is different. It's just the tools or the technology that's different. But human nature is human nature. It doesn't change. So, and for the record, 50. So, yeah.
No, you're lying. You shouldn't lie on, you know, a live show. So.
Not lying. 51 this year. So I'm proud of it. I keep saying, you know, us kids that were born in the 70s and before are by far the luckiest generations. And those of us born in the 70s were the last generation to actually know and understand what real freedom was, because we were not connected by wires to anybody. And we had true privacy. And we had the ability to create and explore and live with everybody without this hateful, you're an immigrant and you're Black and you're white and you're French and you're this and you're that. We didn't have that growing up. We all actually played together, we created together, and we were allowed to experiment together without being tethered with these wires, or now I guess it's wireless technology.
And we weren't victims.
And we weren't victims. We were responsible and accountable for every decision we made and every word we said. And that was okay. Yeah. And
So
these
what do
kids,
you guys think this is all about then?
Well, you gotta, oof, yeah, that's a big question. On what level do you want to talk about? There's always a different level, and
I think at the end of the day, it's all spiritual. I think,
okay, there you go.
and it was COVID that did that. Like I was religious when I was younger. I was, a Baptist. I was pretty serious about it, and then I totally drifted away.
Yeah.
Like totally drifted away. So, right down to, I wasn't going to change my behavior based on anything in some book. That's for sure. And then COVID hit. And I'm just saying what was in my mindset. And you guys can think I'm like some weird, wacky guy, but I was actually thinking they're gonna force us to take something that's extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
They know it's extremely dangerous. Like, this looks to me like population reduction, and look at all the fear and division they're generating. Exactly. I mean, I already shared with you, I was actually worried the army would be going door to door, and you watch the Commonwealth Games, it's a satanic ritual.
Yes.
They actually have people dressed like slaves pulling, chains, dragging out a golden bale. In the Super Bowl that year, and the opening of that tunnel in Europe. And so I'm seeing you really can't see an important event where there's not a satanic ritual.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, I'm experiencing real evil that I never thought I would experience. And I see Satan everywhere. So Christ has got to be real. And it's like, okay, I'm getting serious here. I'm so I'm actually like really thankful for COVID, because once you start seeing it that way, you get some real clarity. Yeah. You didn't have before.
Yeah, it's for us, what is it? 2020 is when we really started digging in and doing the research, and you're looking for that magic bullet. What's the one wing nut that's going to pull their whole framework out? And it doesn't exist. So you look for another avenue, and with all of the research we've done and all the solutions we've looked for, we're finally our show is now honing into that same area where all roads just lead to Jesus. And that's your only solution. We can't have a going forward without God. Every solution includes God going forward.
And even if you don't believe, they do.
Yes.
They do.
They do. Well, and the thing is if you're in the spiritual world, well, when they have these public satanic rituals, they're doing it to get power. And here's the interesting thing. So here, kids are being taught gender stuff, and they're no longer family and we see this as deliberate engineering. Yes. Well, do you understand freedom movement? That the first thing they did, and you do the important things first, don't you? The first thing they did was convince us that there's no God.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the first thing they did.
Yes.
Well, in history, every tyrannical government, they start with three things: intellectualism, creativity, and religion. And those are the first things to go. And if you look at that, that's exactly what's been going on. They've been dumbing down society, keeping us ignorant. Creativity is very controlled now. And then religion was one of the first things they attacked. Yeah.
Exactly.
So you're right. You've been here almost an hour with us, and we haven't even talked about where you're going with the
Yes. So let's talk about that. So the national. So first of all, for those of your viewers that don't know what the National Citizens Inquiry is, and you guys did a pretty good job of introducing us, is we literally are just a bunch of citizens that got together. Like, there's a board that makes decisions and stuff, but they're just ordinary people. No government funding. Early on, we had some political sabotage that the rest of us weren't aware of, but that's that house has been cleaned. And really, we saw the impossible happen. Like like I said, I was on the ground floor. We had no idea how impossible this was. Like, do you know the amount of work? Like, because it's all volunteers. So you actually, do you know how hard it is to, like, for example, get a bunch of volunteers competent to start interviewing witnesses and making decisions on who to call, let alone expert witnesses type thing?
Right.
Or, you got to create local teams in each city to, find a venue and run things, and even to identify and we did this in a matter of months. And then we start, and the Truro ones, they were a little clunky, but the witnesses sure were good.
Yes.
And nothing clunky about the evidence.
No.
By Toronto, we start getting into a routine, and by the end, like now we're just so polished. You think we're all getting paid $1 million and have done this for 20 years, and we're volunteers. Like I don't get paid nobody there gets paid anything.
Right.
So but it was crazy. Like, in Toronto, that's when I first got in front of the camera, and I was, one of my tasks is to arrange for lawyers to be in each city to call witnesses. And I had teams set up, and then as in the Truro one, it worked. But Toronto's coming up, and I've got witnesses dropping out. And then, first day of Toronto, I didn't have a single lawyer all of a sudden. And then I have one lawyer for day 2 and 2 for day 3. And it's like, I tell my wife, Teresa, it's like, I guess we're going to Toronto. She was horrified. Well, just remember, this is the first winter we're not locked down because of the truckers.
True.
Right.
And it was because of the truckers.
Yes.
But, people had just had their bank accounts frozen. And, like, we're still in the madness.
Yes.
And I was afraid to go in front of the camera and do what I did.
Right.
Right.
And I tell you, so in Toronto, which was my first set, I felt like I was being watched. And you know why? Because I was being watched.
Yeah. We're all being watched.
list.
And once you wrap your head around you're being watched, and no matter what you do, they know it anyway. The
just
chains
carry
come
on.
off, and you go.
You really do become more free. There's no question about it. But so Toronto, I'm having to ask for money. I do the opening statements, and like it ended up that it cost us about 30 to 35 grand to do each set of hearings. We had to pay for the AV team, which thankfully we decided we'll just have one team, and like they were like 3-4 times cheaper than anyone else. But they just ended up being so good, like with a mother-son team.
Right.
And but you got to rent the venue, you got to fly the commissioners around, you got to fly me around, you got to fly the AV team around, or pay for them, like just without paying anyone. It actually cost us 35 grand to do 3 days of hearings.
Wow.
In these cities. Now this Edmonton one we're doing for way less. We got a church to donate their venue, and we're not buying food. We got local teams cooking, little old ladies cooking. I'm going to get slapped for saying that. I just said it as a joke anyway, Bonnie. So, but it was just incredible. But anyway, Toronto, I'd be saying, please donate, or we can't do the next city. What I actually meant was, please donate. We couldn't do the next city. And literally we'd get thousands of $20 donations. It was nothing big, and we'd have enough to keep going. And it was just amazing. We just have enough to keep going. And Quebec City, the regular lawyers couldn't do it because our French is too good. And that was a French set of hearings. Well, we didn't have lawyers till about 2 days before. But, but we knew it just story after story where just what we needed, just as we needed it. And it was just, it was magical. And that's what it's all about. It's funny, we have a set of hearings in Edmonton, Alberta, March 6th, 7th, and 8th, again on the topic, Are Children Safe in Canada? Can I make the announcement, Teresa? Are you still around? Can I announce who's coming? Yeah. Dale Bigtree's coming in person.
Oh, wow.
That's a good get. Yeah.
That is a good get.
Yeah. Now, why would somebody like that be coming in person? I because you got the option to attend by video.
Yeah.
He's, heavily involved in Maha and is, in Washington right now at the Senate confirmation hearings.
Yeah.
He's got to do a live show in Austin, the High Wire, on the Thursday. and
Yeah.
we're Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and he's going to fly out either Thursday night or Friday to
Wow.
come to see what a group of citizens are, putting on these hearings. But he's going to be changed because everyone's changed who come and watch. Like there's just something about it. There's
Yeah.
something like, and like people are sworn to tell the truth, and they're questioned by lawyers, and they're questioned by the commissioners, and it's just, there's something about it. Now, if you can't come to Edmonton, like if you are in Edmonton area, or you just feel like coming, we'll post tickets online. They're free, but we just need to have some, like we only have so much space.
Yeah.
And, and if you can't get a ticket, I think we'll have it so you can text us and ask, like, is there room today? Because always there's a certain percentage that doesn't show up, and we want to enable people. But if you can't come, it's streamed online. So just watch our website, nationalcitizensinquiry.ca, and, we'll stream it on Facebook and X and, wherever else. And there'll be other people streaming it. So
Yeah.
there's something about it happening live. Like I know, like when I go and watch other videos that, they're already there, it's still quite something. Like I'm going to challenge your audience. and so track me down, send me an email at info@NCI. If this isn't true, you watch the evidence of Sheila Lewis in Ottawa. I think she was day 2. And you tell me you didn't cry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get a single email. Like it's compelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. God rest her.
Right.
Funny story about Dale Bigtree. We saw him in Washington, and we were in the media tent. And he comes back, and Jody sees him, and she goes, "You need to sign our flag." And he's like, "No, I got to go." And she goes, "No, get back here. You need to sign our flag."
This is a flag from the trucker convoy, and you must sign it. And he goes, "Oh, you're from the trucker convoy?" I said, "Yes." And he's like, "Okay." So he came back and he signed my flag for me.
So she
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's our tradition, and maybe you guys should do this too. Everywhere we go, we get a flag, and everybody who's there at whatever
Signs
event, we sign it. And we've got.
Oh, that's a great
We
tradition.
hang them up in our home because we open
they're
our
all
home
here.
all the time to people. We've always got people coming in and out of our home, and it's really something.
Yeah, we have signatures from all over the world, and it's incredible. So you should maybe think about doing something like that for your events as well.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do that at the NCI, and then because we always go to different provinces, use a provincial flag too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does something for people to see their signature, or they write signatures and messages on the flag with all these other people who are the same as them, that they feel the same way, they're hurt the same way, and to see that they're not alone, it's pretty magical.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is. And it's an emotional experience, and everybody wants to be part of that. And it's pretty cool at the end of the session to go back and look at those flags and read the messages and what people are thinking and feeling. You've captured it all in one place.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you hang it up, and it's amazing.
You've captured it at a point in time.
Yes.
Like one thing I realized not long ago about, the NCI marching across Canada, we started in very beginning of March 2023. And like we had witness after witness drop out like on the day of or the day before because they were afraid still.
Yeah.
And, well, if you had an inquiry today called all the same witnesses, the evidence is going to be completely different.
Yes.
Agreed.
Because the emotional rawness and the situation of fear is gone. Like it's still there. We're all now in post-traumatic stress denial stage.
Yes.
Yes, it's true.
But
So you guys are doing great work. It's a lot of hard work, and it's credible. And that's the thing. You're getting it on record. Jody and I don't make a lot for the show like we talked about, but we're getting this stuff on record, and that's really important. So nationalcitizensinquiry.ca/donate is where you can donate. We do this every single time. Donations, as soon as the Emergency Measures Act rolled out, and they start freezing banks accounts, donations to freedom groups went down. And like to non-existent.
Yeah.
So can you tell people when they donate to your site, it's safe, right?
Well, what can I tell you that it's not tracked or anything like that? No one can. But come on, like, are you not? And back to you guys. Like, I'm ashamed that your viewers don't support you. and like that people don't minimum 25 a month every month, which is only 300. Like, how can it be that you're having to sacrifice financially
Right.
to basically give the people that are watching like quality information that they can't get anywhere else? And same, I'm sorry, the NCI, like people just break their butts trying to bring you information, and it wakes people up because, some people won't watch, Dr. McCullough on Joe Rogan.
Yes.
That's just woo-woo. But Dr. McCullough at the National Citizens Inquiry being sworn to tell the truth and questioned by a lawyer, they'll watch. Like there's something about it because it's a safe environment and format. But no, people need to be supporting you. People need to be supporting other initiatives. It's part of your responsibility. And if you're afraid of it being tracked, then I'm sure you got an address people can send you cash.
Yep. They just have to Google and everything comes up.
Well, still, I mean, just donate. Like, give me a break. Like,
we're not hiding.
You're not like,
well, we say that.
I don't think it's that. I don't think it's fear anymore. Like the truckers convoy really was a unique thing.
Yes.
And I mean,
money's hard. Money's tight now. Money is tight for everybody when you're paying $100 for a half a bag of groceries. I get that.
Getting half a bag in Toronto. Wow, we're not getting that much.
You gotta be smart.
Remember, I said we have tower gardens and we have jalapenos. We're growing a lot of our own food because we can't afford to shop.
Yeah. Right. But we do say, either get on the front lines or support the front lines, one of the two. And it doesn't even have to be us. Like the NCI is doing good stuff. And what I like about it is you're credible. You're not waving F Trudeau flags. You're not all opinionated. You are hearing people out, like you're saying. You're listening to both sides, and you're providing credible evidence. I think the last report you returned was bigger than the Bible and War and Peace put together. It was just like
but it's accessible. So like the very first report, like if you include the transcripts, which were all done by volunteers, it's probably like 5,000-6,000 pages.
Right.
And the written report itself is over 600 pages, but it's accessible. So like, let's say you were just interested in education. Well, there's an index, bang, you can go. And like the discussion part that really gives you the information you need might be 20 pages.
Yeah.
And it's all organized and linked. And it's probably the best report of its kind put out in the world ever. Like, it's just so well, like the commissioners did such a good job. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. We had Ken on when he finished the document, an exhausted, bags under his eyes, but he just finished it. And he sent us a copy. And yeah, you're right. It is very accessible. And if you want to go through those transcripts and cry your eyes out all night, you can go ahead and do that. So
anyone can go to the NCI website and download the PDF.
Yeah.
It's free.
Nice.
Or you can order a paper copy. And it's just our cost for whatever it is to, like, because when you order it, actually, it just gets printed on demand and mailed to you. Right. So we're not trying to make any money off it. So, send us 600,000, on our donate page, but pay $30 for the first 2 volumes of the transcripts or of the report rather. So, it's because we actually found a lot of people they just like the paper one. And I'm that way too. Like for something like that, I'd rather have the paper one. But you can get the PDF on your, download it to computer.
Right.
Just bang, that's anyone can do that. So.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, Shawn, thank you. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank God nobody told you ahead of time, or you didn't know how impossible this was before you started it, or you wouldn't have started it. So I'm glad that you guys, fumbled your way through the first few and figured it out late. And here you are now, established and very credible, which is so important. Because when we're building the next world after this one is just imploded, people are looking for new credible sources that they can actually trust. And I'm 100% back in the NCI for one of those organizations. So,
and it goes back to saying everybody's got a superpower. Yeah. You just don't know it until you throw yourself out there. And, it takes one person to start an action and others will join. Courage is courageous. Contagious. Sorry.
Courage is contagious.
And that's what the NCI did. And and
Well,
is still doing. And now you're focusing on the children. And I'm so glad you guys are, because nobody else is.
that's right.
No, we're documenting stuff that's forbidden. It's really interesting. And I always go back, it's the truckers started everything, because they were the first, and they showed us how to be brave, and they had to have inspired you. You were there. Like, well, you were part of it. You are, you're one of them. So
But
so
I was
thank
doing
you.
stuff for 2 years before that happened. And
Yeah.
that's what a lot of people don't know. In Toronto, every Saturday, we were holding events and doing vaccine vigils and going to the CPSO offices. And we you name it, we did it. Having know your rights sessions in the parks and at the beaches, we were doing it. Shutting down roads, convoying, we were doing it. We had anywhere from 1,000 people to 10,000 people coming out every Saturday. And finally the truckers came out, and of course I was part of it from day one through right till the very end. Got pepper sprayed myself and was butted with the batons and thrown off that wall in front of Chateau Laurier. Right in the thick of it. And I haven't stopped, and fear is not an option when we're talking about our children's futures. It's just not an option. And if more people just said no, or remained in united non-compliance, or even just knew what their rights were and stood up, we wouldn't be here. We'd be enjoying life again. But right now, we all need to stand up. It is a spiritual war. It is a more nefarious eugenics program happening, and that program is being run by Satan, and it hasn't changed since hundreds of years ago. So it's up to us, and we can't be complacent this time. We've got to keep going.
You got to decide who you are.
Right. Find your identity, find your purpose and your destiny.
Can we end with Arthur Plesky's dream? Have you guys had that on your show?
No.
Oh, okay. So,
no.
And it's a good ending because and I heard it from two different sources, including like an American podcast that's pretty big. And I thought, okay, I got to call Arthur and get it from his mouth so that it's not like double hearsay. So I call Arthur up and I say, like, you got to tell me about the dream. Oh yeah, no. So and this is pre-COVID, but not long before COVID. So like, and it's not a dream. He's like, this is full on vision, God talking to him. So he sees this fence that goes into the horizon as far as the eye can see. And everyone in the world is sitting on top of the fence. Like, isn't the symbolism just lovely here? And then God's hands come down and grabs the fence and starts shaking the fence. And the fence is like going, and everyone's hanging on. That no one wants to fall off the fence. Everyone wants to sit on the fence. But one by one, everyone starts to realize they're going to fall off. But they get to choose which side of the fence they're going to fall to. They get to choose which side. And at the end, when there's no one left on the fence, it was made clear to Arthur that everyone's going to know which side of the fence everyone else is on. And, and so what that dream tells, or vision tells me is that we're in a time of shaking, and we all know that's true.
Yes.
Where we're gonna have to decide which side we're on.
Yes.
And so I think that's where we are right now is people are being shaken, and you're going to have to decide which side you're on.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a good word. Yeah,
it is.
That's a good way to end it. Shawn, thank you. Head over to the National Citizen Inquiry for videos, to donate, to watch past testimonials, to be there on the 6th and 7th and 8th to watch live. Shawn, thanks for everything you're doing and all the coordination, all the hard work your whole team is doing. You amazing job you guys are doing. So, and thank you for coming on tonight.
And how can anybody else get involved? Do you still need people to testify? Do you still need volunteers to help at the door?
Good. So actually, and if we can't fit you in this time, it doesn't mean that we won't fit you in next time. So on the website, there is an application There's an application if you're an expert, or their application if you're a lay witness. We actually do want a couple more lay witnesses, so we're a little expert heavy, and we're just, in the next actually week or so, going to be okay. Who are we? Who's in? Who's out? So it's never too late to apply, and like I say, if you don't make this set, I'm sure there'll be another set. So please apply. Thanks for bringing that up, Jody.
You're welcome.
It's awesome.
And a pleasure to be on your show. I really respect what you guys are doing.
Well,
Thank
you
you.
too. Yeah. And it's been a long time in coming. I mean, we haven't had you on yet, so we're glad you came. You almost came on with the supplement stuff, but when that was big, but
Well, it's still big. So
Yeah.
you're going to have me back on the supplement thing. That's
Fine.
super important.
sure.
Yeah, I think we were all together on a media panel. I think
with Wayne, but I think
that's
Glenn
right.
took your spot for the supplements and filled in for that because you were busy. So, all right. Well, we're glad you came, and absolutely, we will check in later on with NCI and with your supplements, and we'll have more than happy to have you back on and talk about that too. So, thanks for joining us. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you Monday.
Have a great weekend, and if you can't be out doing something worthwhile, then at least be making memories with your family.
Right. Okay. Good night, everybody.